Hello everyone and welcome back to Art a la Carte. In this video I want to talk about different types of papers that I use with Copic markers. I get this question a lot: what papers do I recommend? What papers work best with Copic markers? Which ones to avoid? So as far as what paper do I always use, I actually have a variety of different types of papers that I use depending on what I want the product to do. A lot of times with art supplies, think of it not as you can only use this with this. Think of it more as if you use this product with this product, you'll get this result. So depending on how I want the alcohol inks to behave and react to one another, I'll use different types of paper. So let's start off with something super basic. This is just a piece of computer paper, and you can use this for making any kind of Copic coloring. So let's do a little sketch here. To use computer paper to do basic thumbnail sketches or just idea sketches. I don't use it if I'm going to do a detailed piece or a piece that I want to sell, or anything I want to keep. This is usually just to rough out some ideas and designs. One is because obviously it's computer paper, it's not going to hold up very much. Because it is so thin, I can work it a little bit, but it's going to wear out. So other than just practicing sketching, I don't use computer paper. What I will do though is ink this drawing in really quickly. One trick with using Copic markers is you do want to erase any pencil lines, because the Copic marker will tend to pull up some of the lead, even on a colored pencil or something like that, and it's going to kind of dirty up your marker. It doesn't do a lot of damage to it, but it is something that you want to take into consideration if you want to keep your markers nice. So let's look at how this paper works with Copic markers. So the first thing you're going to notice is that your paper immediately absorbs through. So because this paper is so very thin, the ink can absorb very quickly into this, which you're going to have to watch out for bleed through. If you have something on the other side or even a page below it, you want to be careful for that. So one thing you're going to want to test with your marker paper is how much does your markers feather through, or when you lay down your marker tip and put in your ink, how fast does that spread? If I put a line, does it stay? Exactly. So this one has a pretty good feathering. The reason this would be frustrating is if you are trying to color in this little bit of a spot. Let's get a darker color so you can actually see what I'm talking about. And I go in to lay in my color, and I'm keeping my marker pen in the inside of this, but do you see what's happening? The ink is spreading through this paper so quickly that it feathers out. So if you have that problem with your paper, you just have to take that into consideration, that your paper will feather. So one way to kind of fix this is to begin to know how much your paper is going to feather and keep your marker back from that. So you'll see as I color this one in, I'm keeping my marker away from the edges, I'm letting it feather out, and then I'm just adding ink to the areas and let that continue to feather out just a little bit. The more ink I put onto the paper, even if I'm not touching the sides, it's still going to spread. But now let's see, how well does this blend? So I'm going to lay in some color down here for some shadow. And now I'm going to go back in with my lighter shade and see if I can get it to blend. So you can see this area here where it's kind of really dark is actually my desk that you can see. So when I put that in there, you can actually see it, and when I lift the paper up, it's just because it's so saturated you can see underneath it. So you have to let it dry a second or two. And it has a pretty good blending effect with this kind of paper. But again, you can see here, this is already bled over. So this is the reason why I don't prefer to do much Copic work on computer paper, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of bleed overs. It does blend well, so if this is all you have, you can learn how to work around this and how to adjust how much ink you're putting on the paper at one time, but it's not my favorite. So here's a small piece I just cut off. This is a mixed media paper, so it's thick like cardstock, but it has a little bit of a texture to it. So let's look how this works. here I have just a cute little drawing, so let's go ahead and add some color to this. And for this one, I'm not going to use my traditional colors. I'm not going to do black and white just because I want to be fun. So I'm going to try out some other colors here. So first I want to do a little bit of a bleed test. And you can see it does spread a little bit. I don't think as much. Once I lay that color down, it feathers out a little bit. But not too bad. So I will not get too close to the edges with this one. But it also, because of the texture, I don't know if you can see that, has a nice gradient effect that you can get even just with a swash of your brush stroke. You can get a lighter to darker look. Because it's a thicker paper, it takes a lot longer for the ink to absorb into the paper. So you can, lay in your colors a little bit thicker by going over them a bunch, or just by going over it once really lightly, you get a really softer tone. Because I'm working with such dark colors, I'm purposely not pushing my pen to the edge of the line because I want to give that little bit of rim light, which is going to help make a difference between this leg and this leg. I'm also not pushing very hard because I don't want a lot of ink to go into this. So I'm just kind of scribbling the very tip of my marker onto the paper itself, and that's letting a very small amount of ink to absorb in, which will help keep it from bleeding over. So mixed media paper takes this really well. You can see it has a little bit of kind of bleed through, but not super bad. The reason I would use this paper is if I'm going to do a mixture of different medias. If I want to use, this, because this paper is going to hold up with watercolor, it's going to take colored pencils, it takes Copic markers. Some pieces that I know I want to put all of those into it, I would tend to go with this kind of paper here. It's nice and thick, it's going to hold up, it's going to be super durable, so this is a really good bet. The downside is there is a little bit of feathering going on here, but other than that, not too bad. So this is definitely one of my go-to papers, mixed media. So another brand of paper that I use that is more affordable is a nice quality cardstock. So the cardstock I like is Hammermill, either a 60-pound weight or an 80-pound weight. I think this is the 80, so it's nice and thick. But I find that this cardstock works amazing with your Copic markers. Not so well with colored pencils. I mean, colored pencils will take to this, but it's so smooth that there's really not a lot for the colored pencil to grab onto. So you only have a little bit of working space before you've kind of smoothed your paper out so much with colored pencils that you can't layer it. But if I know I'm just going to do mostly Copic markers, I'll go to this brand of cardstock. One caution I will have with this type of paper, or any kind of paper that has a smooth texture, is you want to really be careful when you're inking in things because it takes a little bit longer for your ink to dry because it does not absorb as quickly into this paper. So there's a greater chance of smearing as you're drawing, and you also want to give it a good couple seconds to dry before you erase it. But you're also going to find that this paper does not bleed as badly. So as I tap this down, you can see that the marker ink stays relatively close to where I leave it. Even if I take and I just lay this on here and hold it, it grows a little bit, but not nearly as much as the other marker papers. So you can get really close to the edges and you're not going to have to be afraid of it bleeding over too much unless you are super heavy-handed with your marker. There are other papers out there that you can use that are more expensive. There is the Copic Express blending card, which is very similar to this cardstock, just slightly better quality, I think. It's a little bit thicker, but really, I've done pieces on both, and I find that this, if you get the heavier weight of cardstock in a nice quality of cardstock, it's very similar to blending card, for me at least. There are also other brands of marker paper out there, especially ones that are called bleed proof. I've had a lot of people asking about them. And let me show you the paper here itself. I was really surprised when I got it. It is very thin. I almost said paper thin, but that's kind of redundant because it is paper. But I mean, this is thinner than even computer paper. It's almost like a really thick tracing paper, though I don't know that you can see through it too well. Yeah, you can. It's a thick tracing paper. And when I got it, I was really shocked. So I began playing around with it. And it works nice because it does not feather that much. It has a bit of a texture. Like when I lay the actual ink out onto it, you'll see it has this kind of spotty look. And I've had people ask me about that. They say that Copics have a very spotty look. It's not the Copic so much as it is the paper. There's a little bit of a texture on this paper, but not nearly as much as on this paper. So this paper really creates a texture. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just might not be what you want for your picture. So depending on if you want this texture or not would be a determining factor whether you use this. So even these really dark colors, I can blend a little bit, but not super much. Like here's where the straight color was, and it's not budging. Now the thing about it is I put a lot of ink on this paper, and you can see it has come through, but it is not going to get onto other paper. So let's do a test here. We'll put this paper right here. Let's lay this down right here. Let's take a nice dark color. I'm going to use my Prussian blue, which is one of the darkest blues I have. And we're just going to soak this spot right here. So there is a lot of ink in this one spot. You can see it has come through, but it does not go onto the other paper. Really soaked, but nothing. See, it comes through there, but not onto the paper. So if you're the kind of artist that does not like things to bleed through on other pieces of paper, this works for you. I do not like this. I don't like the way it works with each other because it does stuff like this. It blends when it wants to, and then sometimes it just doesn't. And I haven't figured out what it is that does it. But also, I just don't feel the paper feels like a high quality piece of paper. Like if I were to do a really nice piece on this paper and then sell it to someone for a nice price and they got it, they would go, what? This is like the cheapest computer paper is what it feels like. It feels like really cheap paper to me. I like a thicker paper, but there are artists out there that like a thin, lightweight paper. So this might be a good paper for you. There are a lot of different brands. I know Copic has one. Pro Markers has a brand. I know there's a couple other brands of paper out there that have a marker paper, and they're usually generally thin like this, especially if they're bleed proof. So I don't know what magic is in this paper that allows it not to bleed through with it being this thin, but that's what it is. So here's a piece I did about a month ago, and again, this is on the cardstock paper. And with this piece, I was able to do all the marker work and put in a little bit of colored pencil on top to complete this picture. You can see it did bleed through, so I really want to watch and make sure that I don't have another nice piece of paper underneath it. I always have a scratch paper, or actually have this, this is just poster board that I put on my desk. Finding the paper that works best for you really is trial and error. Finding out how you want your markers to react with the paper and finding that special blend or mix. I love watching other people's videos and finding out what papers they use, and I try them out, but I always make my own opinion based on my art, and that's completely okay. You might try cardstock and go, no, I don't like how cardstock works. You might like the bleed proof paper. You might like to use a different brand of paper. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comment section below. I love answering or creating videos that answer those questions. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and until next time, God bless you guys, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye!